Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head to Belgium once again, and we're going to revisit a brewery that you've seen me review a number of things from actually, and we're going to look at a special beer today that's a version of one that you saw me review quite recently. So we're going to have a return to Mechelen and review another beer from Brouwerij Het Anker, literally the Anchor Brewery if you want to translate it into English, and we're having a look at another beer from their Gouden Carolus range. So this is a special version of the Cuvee van de Keizer, and it is the whiskey infused version. So like the regular version, I guess you should say, this one is a Belgian style quadruple and it comes in at 11.7% ABV. So it's a little bit higher in the alcohol. The regular Cuvee van de Keizer is 11% ABV, but this one is infused a little bit with the whiskey that they produce under the Gouden Carolus name. I would love to try that whiskey on its own actually, but I've not seen where you can actually get a bottle of that. I don't think it actually comes to Sweden through Systembolaget, but yeah, this one was another one of the small partiers. I believe it was the 5th of October 2018 that this one came out, if I'm remembering the exact day correctly, but there was also another one that came out, so you will see another review from me from the Gouden Carolus range either before or after this one. I'm not quite sure when I'll release them, but yeah, the whiskey infused version of the Cuvee van de Keizer from Brouwerij Het Anker in Mechelen in Belgium, just to summarise all of that. But yeah, really looking forward to this beer, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. I'm pretty sure this is going to be special because the regular Cuvee van de Keizer was very good. So yeah, so as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Gouden Carolus range from Brouwerij Het Anker. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Het Anker then. So as I've told you before, this brewery is from the Dutch speaking city of Mechelen, which is located on the major kind of urban industrial axis of Brussels, Antwerp, and it's located about 25 kilometres from either city, and this of course is one of the cities in Flanders, or Vlaanderen to give it its Dutch name, that's famous for historical art. But the Het Anker brewery is a Flemish-Belgian brewery originally founded back in 1471. So Charles the Bold granted the Beguine sisters of Mechelen the permission to brew beer for their own private use free of taxes. So beguinages are basically small independent entities where the Beguine sisters, or just nuns I guess you would say, would bake bread, nurse the ill, brew beer and grow vegetables. Quite a nice life I have to say. But they brewed their beer traditionally there for over 3 centuries until around the year 1865. So in 1872 Louis van Breda purchased the Beguinage brewery in Mechelen, and he built one of the first modern steam operated breweries of the time, and in 1904 the brewery was renamed NV Het Anker, basically meaning the Anchor Brewery, as I explained earlier, after the historic brewer from Mechelen, Jan in de Anker. So in 1912, Victor van Breda, the son of Louis, built the first Belgian maltings made out of reinforced concrete, and he produced malt for Het Anker and several other local breweries. But Victor's son Charles used the extra capacity to experiment with food based on wheat and other dry substances during the economic crisis. During the Second World War, the brewery also hired more people than necessary to actually help them avoid the mandatory enforced labour that was being enforced by the occupying Third Reich, the Germans. But in 1938, Charles became the chairman of the Belgian Brewers Association, and after the Second World War he built a new state-of-the-art brew room with copper kettles, and they also decided to drop the malting process to focus solely on producing beer. And Charles was one of the first in Belgium to realise that the brewery could not survive solely by producing lager beers, and he began to produce ales, and at the start of the 1950s he introduced the Emperor's beer range, which is of course the Gouden Carolus. But in the 1960s the Emperor's beers were renamed the Gouden Carolus after Charles Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire, who of course is a very, very famous figure throughout European history, and a very important figure in fact with the 30 Years' War and all these kind of things. But he'd been raised in Mechelen, and after his abdication he ordered beer to be shipped to Spain because he missed the beer over there. And after big success, the brewery stopped producing lagers, and then Charles' son Michael took over the brewery. However, there was a period of decline during the 1980s, but in 1990 Michel's nephew Charles Leclerc took control of the brewery, and under his guardianship the brewery underwent a period of revival with a series of modernisations, and they introduced many new beers. This of course was when they introduced the Cuvée van de Keizer range, the blue and the red labels. They also introduced the Tripel, the Ambrio and the Hopsenior IPA, the Christmas and Easter beers as well, both of which are Belgian strong dark ales. And then there was a modernisation of the brewery that was completed in 2010 as well, and that year they also bought a 17th century gin distillery and began production of the Gouden Carolus malt whisky as well. But the brewery have a hotel and brasserie where you can basically go and stay and enjoy the beer as well, so hopefully I can get out to Belgium at some point and check that out for myself. I really do need to do a Belgium trip and go and have a taste of some of the beers at the actual breweries, but the difficult thing I guess would be actually getting around, because you know, if you're driving around, well, you shouldn't be driving around and tasting all these different beers, but you know, it would be cool to go and do a proper brewery tour in Belgium at some point. I think that would be a really quite fun trip to do. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Brouwerij Het Anker just now. A very interesting history, and of course they do produce some pretty damn awesome beers. The first one that I reviewed for you, I think, was the Ambrio, which was really, really nice. And this one, of course, I really enjoyed the Cuvée van de Keizer from these guys before. They do a very nice Tripel as well, actually, but I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was only recently that I reviewed that one actually, so yeah. But yeah, that's all you need to know about the brewery just now. If you want to learn a little bit more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So this one, as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, is an 11.7% quadruple. They infuse it with a little bit of the Gouden Carolus whisky that they do. This beer was first introduced in 2015, of course, as well, and they've done a version of it every year since, and it's brewed on the 24th of February each year for Charles V's birthday, which is pretty cool. And of course they've got to mature it for a couple of months after that, so it should be in good shape for us drinking it now. So yeah, really looking forward to this one. We can get rid of the brewery notes and we'll have a taste of this beer. So it says on the side here, Gouden Carolus Cuvée van de Keizer was enriched by an infusion of Gouden Carolus single malt whisky. The result is an exceptional ale, powerful and full-bodied with subtle touches of vanilla, oak and chocolate. An imperial brew to cherish and enjoy in moderation. So yeah, I'm going to share this with my friends just after I've made this video. But yeah, it shows you on the side here how they actually do this one. You know, they're taking little bits of both and putting them in the respective things. That's kind of cool. So you've got the yeah, you've got the stills and things like that up here, and they're basically, it's kind of showing you they're putting a little bit in the they're putting a little bit of the whiskey in the barrel here, and then just adding it, I think, once they've actually fermented the beer, which is kind of cool. It's quite interesting, that, actually. I do like that little picture that they've put on that. I think I'll maybe keep this bottle because it is really cool, but I would love to do a whiskey review of, or a malt review as I call them on the channel. I'd love to do a malt review of the different beers that we can get from, or the whiskies that we can get from Gouden Carolus as well. That would be really cool. But yeah, as you can see on the top of this little thing here, there is the anchor there, because it is Het Anker Brewery, of course. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Yeah. And there you can see, I never actually showed you the bottle before opening this up, which was bad. But there you can see, there is Charles V, or Karlovy as they call him in the Czech Republic, because I think, you know, he was very important. Or was he actually Czech? I can't quite remember. He spent a lot of time in Prague, because I remember him being mentioned a lot when I was on my tour in Prague, and I think it was, you know, there's the Karlovy University, which is one of the best universities in Europe. But you can see, really nicely presented beer, this one. So yeah, without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see how this one turns out. Just look at how thick that beer is as we're pouring it. Yeah, I think that's, oh, you can smell the whiskey in that as you open it up. That's quite funny. When you open this beer up, immediately you can smell these big kind of phenol-y notes, that big medicinal kind of quality that you often get from Belgian beers. But with this one, you can smell that whiskey infusion straight away. Actually, it smells quite, for a whiskey, I would say, it does smell quite sweet. It smells like quite a sweeter whiskey note that you're getting off this one. But yeah, look at that. If I hold this beer up to the light, it's got a nice kind of dark ruby tone to it. It is, I don't know how well you guys can see that on the camera, but it's got a lovely kind of ruby sort of hue to it. Yeah, lovely dark sort of ruby edge to it. There's a solid kind of half finger of a frothy, I would say fawn coloured head on this one actually, yeah, fawn coloured head on this beer. When you sugar it up and you start to get a little bit more out of it right enough, it does become a little bit more beige, but I think fawn is a nice kind of descriptor for this one. I don't know how well you're going to see it on the camera, but this beer does have a degree of transparency to it. It's a little bit hazy, but you can see through this beer if you shine it up to the light. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall, it does smell really quite, or it does look really quite nice, and pretty much as you would expect from a quadruple actually, although you can get them in a fair range of colours. Some of them aren't quite as red as this, from what I can remember. But yeah, let's take a little closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. But I will say there's a lovely amount of red fruit just kind of coming out of this one as you move the beer around. Oh my god, man, that's I'm saying my god and I'm an atheist, but that is a beast of a beer. The aroma of that is pretty unreal. So, and the thing is, you can age this as well, but you know, it's whiskey infused. I'm just like, I want to try that. I really want to try this beer. But yeah, that smells absolutely beautiful. So let's try and break this down a little bit. So with this one, there's a lot of brown sugar in there. You've got the rich caramels in there, it's got that sweeter note to it, there's biscuit as well, but you've also got some of that kind of toasted element to it, that toasty caramel, and you've also got a little bit of a kind of slightly more treacly molasses sort of thing to this beer as well. It smells absolutely lovely. Yeah, treacle molasses, slightly lighter caramel, it has got that sweet edge to it as well. It's definitely a little bit toasted. Some biscuity notes in there. It's got an edge of a kind of brown bready quality in there. You can pick up that doughy, bready, yeasty thing that you always expect from the Belgian beers. The Belgian beers for me, of course, are all about the yeast, and I love, you know, my favourite Belgian beer styles are probably the blondes, the quadruples and the triples, and some of the Belgian style Scotch ales that you've had actually, that you get out there, are actually really interesting as well. Some of them can be really, really nice. But yeah, this is a really, really lovely smelling beer. This, just as I always say, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. But this is a beautiful smelling beer. That it's it really does. It actually smells a lot like a Scotch ale in some ways. And I love that, you know, and that would be the whiskey kind of coming out. The Scotch ales do have an almost kind of whiskey-ish note to them. It would be interesting to know if they do use a little touch of Scottish malt in there, but I think most of their malt will be locally sourced from Belgium. But it's interesting to see that you still get that almost Scotch ale note to this beer. But yeah, I'm not getting the chocolate in the aroma that they were talking about. I have to say that, I'm not getting chocolate for me. This beer is all about the brown sugars. There's definitely vanilla though. You can pick up a bit of an oaky vanilla type thing, and there's a little bit of a nutty quality as well. A little bit of a slight earthiness to it, but that's very mild, and you can pick up some a little bit of grassy notes as well. But there's some red fruit in there. It's quite a candied red fruit. It reminds me of the little heart-shaped sweets that you get in Haribo Starmits. It's just like a little bit of a kind of candied strawberry, but at the same time you've got, I think it's the phenols that give you that. You've got a little bit of that kind of cough syrupy, medicinal quality coming out of this beer as well. It's saying on the side here, served between 10 and 12 degrees. I think I've got it about 8ish, maybe 9 degrees at the moment. But it should still be fine. You know, I like the beers just to have a little bit of a chill on them. But yeah, it smells lovely. As I always say, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. But this one is the Cuvée van de Keizer whiskey infused version from the Het Anker brewery in Mechelen over in Belgium. Let's get stuck into this beer. An 11.7% quadruple beer with a little bit of the Gouden Carolus whiskey added to it. So let's get stuck into this one then. Slàinte, skål. Ooh. That's interesting. The whiskey's definitely coming out at the front of the palate. You can feel a bit of the alcohol warmth from this beer as well, actually. I will say that about this one, you can definitely feel a little bit of an alcohol warmth coming out of this beer. Yeah, this one I think, it's almost, obviously it's very similar to the Blue Label Cuvée Van de Keizer, but it's almost just like it's a little, to me, the overall flavour of this one is just a little bit darker, if that makes sense. That it's not quite, this one isn't quite as sweet, it's almost like it's just a little bit more, that the brown sugars are just a little bit more kind of syrupy, treacly sort of thing. That's what I'm thinking about this one. I don't think this one is quite as sweet as the original version. The Whisky Infusion, I think, is giving it just a little bit more of an almost darker character. That's just a kind of general observation that I would say about this one. But I will say, make no mistake, this is a monster of a beer. It's absolutely beautiful. It's awesome. It really, really is. So let's try and break this one down a little bit. What I will say as well is I actually find this one, in the mouthfeel, it actually feels a little bit lighter, which is kind of strange to me. This one I don't find as kind of sticky and oily in the mouthfeel as I did with the regular version, which I'm surprised. In some ways I'm surprised about it, in some ways I'm not, because, you know, whiskey, it's not generally oily in the mouthfeel. It's very, very clean, and you can pick up part of that in the mouthfeel. So maybe that's given a little bit of an impression that the beer is actually lighter. That's another observation I'm making from the first couple of sips of this beer. But yeah, let's try and break this down then. So with this beer, you get a nice kind of fairly light base. You get a good bit of a kind of lighter sort of brown bready note to this one. That's kind of forming the linchpin of this beer. You can feel there's a little, in the middle of the palate, you can feel there's a little bit of that kind of doughy, bready, yeasty kind of thing going on that you would expect of the Belgian beers. And as you go into the aftertaste, this beer almost becomes a little bit cakey. You've seen how long it was since I've taken a sip of this beer. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of boozy cakey sort of thing to it on the aftertaste just now, which is really interesting. Yeah, I would stick with that. Yeah, definitely a little bit of an almost cakey flavour to this as you go further and further into the aftertaste. On top of that sort of lighter brown bready sort of thing and the slightly doughy quality in the middle of the palate, on top of that you can, there's a lot of brown sugar here. As I said, I don't find this one as sweet as I did the other one. It's almost like it's a little bit of a roasty brown sugar note that's sitting in the middle of the palate. There is a little bit of that richer caramel, there is a bit of that richer caramel right in the middle of the palate, but for me, generally the sugary note in the middle of your palate there is quite a dark kind of roasty type thing. I would say that about this beer. Yeah, that's nice. It's, as I say, it really is, it's amazing how adding a little bit of a whiskey to a beer can completely change it. But this beer for me, as I say, the main difference that I'm getting is that it's not quite as sweet, and the sweetness that it does have is a good bit darker than the other one, than the regular Cuvée Van de Keizer. But yeah, I like how everything's kind of going together in this one. The question would be whether I prefer this one to the Cuvée Van de Keizer, and if I'm honest, I actually think I like the original a little bit better than this, but this is a really good beer at the same time. But yeah, I think personally, I do prefer the original one to this, and that's, I wasn't expecting that, to be honest, but it is, as I say, this is a nice beer. If you like your quadruples to be a little bit lighter in the mouthfeel and a bit darker in these brown sugar notes, I think you will prefer this one, pardon me, to the original Cuvée Van de Keizer itself. I don't know what I can't remember what the difference in cost was. It must have only been about 10 Swedish krona or something like that. There wasn't too much of a difference in the cost between these two beers. This one I think cost me around 150 Swedish kronor, so somewhere in the region of like 12-13 pounds to buy, and I guess like 15 euros. But you know, I thought with this one, just bugger it. It was close to payday. But yeah, for this one, I would say it's the brown sugary notes are really nice. Overall, you can pick up towards the front of the palate with this one, you can pick up the sort of woody notes to this beer. It definitely has a little bit of that oaky vanilla quality that they're talking about. I think the vanilla comes out a little bit more as you go further and further into the aftertaste with this beer. Yeah, the vanilla note is coming out in the initial part of the flavour. You don't get so much of it, but you can pick up this a little bit of a touch of an oaky, woody, nutty sort of thing, that's just before the front of the palate where you get the fruity notes. But let's take the hops of this quickly then. On the side of your palate, a little touch of earthiness in there. As you come further forward, that earthiness just smooths out, a little bit of floral character towards the front corners of the palate, then around the very front curve of the tongue, it is a little bit lighter and grassy as well. And then behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get the little oily bubble, where you get the kind of nice, juicy, fruity esters coming out of the beer. And for me, this one, I think it's quite pruny, to be honest. Yeah, for me, this beer is quite, there's a good bit of a pruny quality to this one. I think as you go further into the aftertaste, the fruity flavours become a little bit more candied. As I say, you get that little heart-shaped sweet that's like the Haribo Star Mix in there. There's a little bit of there is a little bit of that red kind of fruity note in there. Candied strawberry, a little bit of a figgy kind of note to it. This one definitely doesn't have the sort of raisiny, plummy sharpness to it. It's a sort of kind of smooth, figgy, sort of pruny, candied strawberry sort of flavour that you're getting out of this one. It's a little bit hard to put your finger on exactly where this one is, because the whisky infusions are changing the fruits, I think, in this beer a little bit. But yeah, as I say, the main thing that I'm noticing about this one compared to the original, this one, it just doesn't feel as thick to me. The brown sugars, I think, are a little bit darker. It's a little bit more kind of syrupy and things like that. It's not quite as sweet, generally, as the original version of the beer. But that said, it is really, really nice. It's just amazing to see what adding a little bit of whisky to the beer can actually do. I would really be very curious to try the whisky on its own. Like I say, I don't know where you can actually get it, but as I say, I'm not. If I bought a bottle of whisky, you know, I'd drink about I'd drink about 50 millilitres of it as a taste for a review, and then I wouldn't drink the rest of it, so it'd be a bit of a kind of waste to buy a full bottle of that. But yeah, I mean, for this one, it's I like how everything's going together in this beer. It's all about how these flavours kind of intertwine, and you can definitely pick up the sort of whisky infusion with this one. I'm really not getting the chocolate flavours that they talk about in this one. For me, this one's more about brown sugars. It's got a little bit of a darker note to it. I can see why some people would say this one is chocolate, but for me it's not chocolate, it's brown sugars. It's a sort of treacly molasses sort of thing that's forming the basis of this beer, and it's quite dark. It is quite a dark, syrupy sort of brown sugary note that you're getting from this one, but overall it is really nice. And some of the woody, the thing that's lingering into the aftertaste with this one is a little bit of that woody, oaky kind of flavour. There's a little bit of the vanilla in there, some of the earthy hops are sitting there, some juicy fruits as well, and you do get a kind of lingering, you do get a little bit of a lingering, that you do get a little bit of lingering kind of cakey flavour to it as well. As mentioned, it's like a little bit of a booze cake, this one. I'd absolutely love to see these guys try and brew a Scotch ale using the Belgian yeast. There's a couple of breweries do it because the soldiers from the First World War were stationed there, and you know, they brewed beers for the Scottish soldiers. But for that, I would love to see them actually brew one with that, because I think with the way they've got this, the flavours are, the way that they're doing the quadruples, the flavours are actually quite similar. That's probably why I enjoy this style so much, because it is similar to the Scotch ale, which is my native beer style, I guess. But for me, it's a really nice beer, this one, but I would say I prefer, I do personally prefer the original. As we always say though, beer is subjective, so people like different things. But onto the mouthfeel of this beer then. Yeah, onto the mouthfeel. It is a full-bodied beer, but it's on the lighter end of full body. It's definitely not as thick as the original is. Carbonation is quite smooth in this one, I would say. I do remember the carbonation in this beer is quite smooth. It's got a little bit of an oily quality to it, but at the same time it has a little bit of wetness. As I say, not quite as thick and syrupy as the original version. Lovely big malty sweetness to this one. Bit of a darker malty sweetness compared to the original, like I was saying. The hoppiness, it's not really bitter, the hops in this one. It mainly is quite smooth. I think you'd be lucky to get 20 IBUs out of this, to be honest. And of course, Belgian beer isn't about that. Belgian beer is more about the malts and the yeast rather than anything else. Good bit of juicy, fruity quality to the beer, and overall, like I said, it's a beautiful, beautiful beer. And it's very interesting to see how just adding a little bit of a whiskey to the beer changes the flavour. But I'd really love to do a whiskey review of the Gouden Carolus in the future. But as I say, I think it's a bit of a heavy investment just for about 50 millilitres of whiskey that I would actually drink myself. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. Very interesting to see something that has a little bit of a, I guess you could say, a Scottish edge to it. And I would love to see these guys brew a Scotch ale using their yeast tunes, because as I say, the quadruple and the Scotch ale, in some ways they are fairly closely related in terms of their flavour profiles and things like that. But yeah, lovely beer, this one, the Cuvée van de Keizer whiskey infused version from Brouwerij Het Anker in Mechelen in Belgium. And I tell you something, it will give you a little bit of a buzz. I've not drank that much of it and I can feel it already, but let's leave it at that for this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know about different vintages of this one that you've had as well. Let me know how this one kind of comes about with aging. I would think that it would smooth out and get a little bit sweeter over time. You'd maybe get a little bit of a more kind of sharper quality to the fruity notes in this beer as well. I think it would be interesting to age one of these, so maybe I'll buy another one and age it for a little while and save it for a special review. But yeah, really, really nice beer, this one, and I'm glad that I got to review this. So make sure you check out my social media. As I say, let me know your favourite beers from Gouden Carolus. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys very soon with another review. So this one was the Cuvée van de Keizer, the Gouden Carolus Cuvée van de Keizer whiskey infused version from Brouwerij Het Anker in Mechelen over in Belgium. Until the next time, stand just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Prost, santé, skål.